one or two or three? Three. There we go. We got to three. Good morning. I would like to call this meeting of the House Committee on Public Safety to order. Members will indicate their presence on the electronic voting board. So if the clerk could open the roll for attendance. The clerk will close the roll, and we have a quorum present. All right, so we've got a busy docket this morning. Before we do subcommittee reports, we have, I think, 4 bills on the docket, that are identical to bills that passed out of this committee. Let's see, I have one bill I think that is similar to a bill I think will be pretty non-controversial, and then we have 3 bills that are essentially identical to bills that we've seen already. Went through the full subcommittee vetting process and everything last year and haven't had any changes to them. So with that, I'm going to start, I think, with Delegate Thomas's House Bill 1602, because I don't know, we'll see. I think this one will be fairly non-controversial, but I tend to jinx it when I say that. So Delegate Thomas, you want to go ahead and present House Bill 1602?
You want me to go down, or is up here okay, Mr. Chairman?
What's that?
Is it okay? Is here okay?
From there.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, House Bill 1602 seeks to merely expand what this committee gave to firefighters to also include law enforcement officers with paid leave while completing National Guard duty. I think it was perhaps explained to the committee last year that they didn't need to be included because they were already included, but I've had several police officers come to me in the last year and at least explain that in their experience with their departments, that's not occurring. So to put it plainly in the code would give them that coverage.
All right, are there any questions from members of the committee for the bill's patron? All right, seeing none, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Please come forward, identify yourself, and give your very brief testimony.
Thank you. Rich Goska with the Police Benevolent Association. We appreciate Mr. Delegate Thomas putting the bill forward. Our members requested this bill. They saw the firefighters were included last year, and they wanted this to have the fair shot at serving their Commonwealth in another capacity and having the same benefits. We appreciate your support.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, the committee operates by motion. It's been moved to report. Second. Properly seconded. The clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes on the electronic voting board. The clerk will close the roll. Delegate Thomas, your bill reports 18-0 to the floor. All right, next up is a bill that was identical to a bill that we saw last year. It had a full and extensive hearing with lots of testimony in subcommittee. Nothing has changed, and so my intention is to have Delegate Helmer present the bill. We'll take questions from members of the subcommittee. Anybody who wants to speak to the motion is welcome to do that. I don't see any need for any additional public testimony since we've heard this pretty well last year. If anybody needs a reminder on how you voted, I can remind you, but I think you probably know. So with that, Delegate Helmer, House Bill 1608.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In front of us is House Bill 1608, Industry Standards for Firearms Manufacturers and Sellers Bill. What this bill does is simply establish a set of standards that ensures that firearms manufacturers and those who sell firearms in the Commonwealth of Virginia adhere to standards that we would expect of other products, particularly given the manner in which these instruments can be used. If you believe that somebody who missells, misrepresents, or conducts misconduct in terms of the trafficking or manufacture of firearms ought to be liable, then you should vote yes. If you don't think that, then you should vote no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, any questions for Delegate Helmer from members of the subcommittee? We already are from the committee, excuse me. Again, as a reminder, this bill passed this committee by a vote of 12-10. I think it was these 12, those 10. And so with that,
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes. The clerk will close the roll. Bill reports by a vote of 11-8. Next on the list is another bill that is identical, although I understand, Delegate Helmer, that you have one sort of minor line amendment, which I think is fairly self-explanatory, but if the clerk would report a line amendment to House Bill 1797, or the council, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
It should be appearing online, but currently it is on line 45, introduced after Commonwealth. Insert the provisions of the subsection shall not apply to an active duty service member of the United States Armed Forces or the spouse of such active duty service member.
All right, any questions from anyone about the import of that amendment? All right, is there a motion?
Amendment?
Second. It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the line amendment. As many as favor that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the motion carries. With that, Delegate Helmer, would you like to just briefly explain your bill that we voted on last year?
Yes, Mr. Chair. As amended, this bill is otherwise exactly the same as the bill that was in front of us last year. The Commonwealth of Virginia has established standards that we believe are necessary to obtain a concealed carry permit. However, current law pushes us to the lowest common denominator, forcing us to accept the concealed carry permits of states that don't require the training that we require. We think this is inconsistent with the safety of the Commonwealth. As amended, this ensures that active duty service members who are required to come to Virginia and trained on firearms are able to maintain the reciprocity. Otherwise, it puts us in a posture of making sure that Virginia law defines how Virginia gun owners are able to responsibly own their firearms. With that, Mr. Chair, I am ready for any questions from the committee.
All right. Any members of the committee have any questions for Delegate Helmer about the bill as amended? All right. Anybody wish to speak to the measure? All right. It's been moved and seconded. The bill report is amended. The clerk will open the roll. And the clerk will close the roll. The bill reports by a vote of 11 to 9. Delegate Bennett Parker. Sorry, I probably should have taken you first since you're not on this committee, but.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Delegate Bennett Parker, you have House Bill 1960, another bill that is identical to a bill that we saw and voted on and heard testimony on last year. Do you want to very briefly remind us what your bill did?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 1960 would keep illegal guns out of the hands of convicted domestic abusers and save lives, and the bill does not affect law-abiding citizens. Given the lethal combination of domestic violence and firearms, Virginia law prohibits those convicted of domestic abuse and those subject to final protective orders from possessing firearms. These individuals are legally required to relinquish their firearms already, and they can do so to a transferee, a federal licensed arms dealer, or a law enforcement agency. However, there's currently no mechanism in place to ensure that this transfer actually happens, so the bill simply requires that they complete a form that says who is in possession of their firearm. The bill would also provide clarity for law enforcement to effectively enforce our laws by aligning the requirements in these sections with the requirements in Section 19.2-152.14 about substantial risk orders. This would help ensure that the transfer of the firearm, which again is already required by law, actually takes place and there is a record in the court. It does not affect law-abiding gun owners, and most importantly, it will save lives. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk that a woman will die by 500%. So again, it will allow for better enforcement of our existing laws. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. Any questions for the bill's patron from members of the committee? Mr. Chairman. Delegate Obenshain.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question for the patron. Currently, under the current law, when somebody's subject to a protective order and they have to surrender their firearms, they fill out a form certifying that they've gotten rid of their firearms, and they have to file that form with the court clerk that issued the protective order. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, to the delegate, I say I'm referring back to the code section. I also have some experts here with me. If I understood the question, it was that there's already a form required, but I believe that it does not specify who is in possession of the firearm.
Mr. Chairman, follow up.
Delegate Obenshain.
So what your bill would do would be to add the name and address to that of the person receiving the firearm to that public record. Is that correct?
Could council maybe help us with that answer? We'll do a little phone a friend here.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question was, the bill, what the bill would do would be to add the name and the address of the person receiving the firearm, not the person subject to the protective order, to that public record that's filed with the clerk. Is that accurate?
Yes, I believe that's correct.
Okay, so, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Bennett Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the delegate, I would say that, again, there's a choice as to who this firearm is going to. It can go to a federally licensed firearms dealer, a law enforcement agency, or an individual. It is entirely left to the discretion of the individual.
All right, thank you, Delegate Bennett Parker. All right, any further questions for the patron? Anyone wish to speak to the measure? All right, the clerk will, is there a motion?
Move the report. Second.
It's been moved and seconded to the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. Members can cast their votes. The clerk will close the roll. Bill reports by a vote of 12 to 9.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Delegate Bennett Parker. All right, that concludes, I think, our just straight to full docket. I think we have left is our House Public Safety Subcommittee report. And for that, we will turn to Chairman Rasool.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First up, we have House Bill 2033 by Delegate Simons, which directs the DCJS to develop an online course for retail licensees and their employees. This course would be posted online that they could take to recognize and report instances of human trafficking. The subcommittee recommended reporting 6-0, and I so move.
All right, so there's a substitute? No?
No, not for this one.
Okay. All right, House Bill 2033, Delegate Simons.
Okay, the bill that's online is 1894.
Oh,
My apologies.
All right.
all right. So we have a motion properly seconded to report House Bill 2033 from Delegate Simons, which reported from subcommittee unanimously. The clerk will open the roll. The computer's catching up with us. I talk too fast, I think. All right, members can indicate their votes. The clerk will close the roll. Bill reports by a vote of 20-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up is House Bill 1894. First, I'd like to move the substitute.
Is there a second? Second. All right, substitute, is many in favor of adopting the subcommittee substitute, will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The substitute is now before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1894 requires DOC to take heating and cooling measures in extreme temperatures. The subcommittee recommended reporting with substitute 4-2, and I so move.
It's been moved and seconded to the bill report. The clerk will open the roll. The clerk will close the roll. The bill reports 12-8.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up is House Bill 2039. There's an amendment. I move the amendment.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, this was my amendment that I did on the fly. I understand from talking to some folks out there that they've got some concerns about it. So I think for the time being, I'd actually ask that we
Move to pass. Aye.
pass by the amendment.
Pass by the amendment?
The amendment.
Okay. So we move to pass by the amendment then?
As many as favor of that motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, so we've got the original bill unamended before us, which simply creates, I'm sorry, you can tell us what it does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very fine bill, which requires the Department of Criminal Justice in consultation with Virginia FOIA to establish a model policy for encrypted telecommunications. The subcommittee recommended reporting 4-2, and I so move.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to the bill report. Clerk will open the roll. Members can cast their votes. All right, the clerk will close the roll. Bill reports 12 to 9.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And lastly, House Bill 2105 by Delegate Kent has a substitute. I move the substitute.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the committee substitute. As many as favor of that motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the substitute's before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2105 requires the Regional Jail Authority to designate a local law enforcement agency to have the authority to investigate any acts of violence that occurs at the regional jail facility. The subcommittee recommended reporting 4-2, and I so move.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Delegate Lopez seconded the motion to report. The clerk will open the roll. Members will indicate their votes. I heard you. All right, the clerk will close the roll. Bill reports by a vote of 20 to 1. Thank you, Delegate Kent. All right, is there any other business to come before the committee this morning? If not, the committee will rise.